Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about information and sourcing and processing information and where some information comes from. And this is in particular regard to Ukraine, but you can apply it to a lot of other things. We're going to do this because I had two questions come in. One was, of course, incredibly snarky, and one seemed pretty genuine. Basically, people were looking over information and they were trying to figure out where it came from to determine whether or not they should put any stock in it. The first one was basically, hey, really great job there putting out all the pro-Western, pro-NATO propaganda, but Wagner has way more at that camp than what you said. Who's your source? Bigfoot? Yeah, my source is Bigfoot. Okay, so what I said in that video was that they didn't have a lot of armor there. They didn't have a lot of military equipment there. You could count it on your fingers. That's what I said. I'm going to do you one better now. Between July 19th and time of filming, there were 11 convoys that entered that camp. Now, those 11 convoys, they deposited outside of the camp at time of filming. The most recent information at time of filming says there are 60 trucks with like the canvas backs, 530, these are all plus or minus 10, 530 personal vehicles outside, to include those weird minibuses that they love, vans, pickup trucks, stuff like that. There were 35 real buses, like big ones, about 100 trucks, again, big trucks, on the back of, I don't want to say most, a lot, was construction equipment, and roughly 30 actual military vehicles, the overwhelming majority of which were just military troop transport trucks. The number of armored vehicles that they have is less than 10. The reason I didn't mention artillery is because there's not any there. Okay. So, what are the ways this information could be gathered by those who reported it? I was not the only one who put that kind of information out. One really good way would be the group inside Belarus who they don't like the government, and they filmed the convoys and they put the information out. That would be a super useful way to determine what was inside of it. Another would be looking at all of the interviews and the B-roll footage from the interviews. There's a metric ton of intelligence that's in the background of those. And still another way would be satellite imagery. That's not just the purview of the nation state anymore. Civilians can get access to it. A good one off the top of my head would be Planet Lab. Now, is that how I got the information? No, I got it from a guy who owns a burger joint. But if you were going to put out a video talking about it, you might check it using these methods. Now, to the people who had the question about how the maps were made and whether or not they could trust those maps when people put them together, the ones that say assessed areas of control and stuff like that. There's a number of ways that they do it. They're kind of the same principle, though. There's a lot of footage from this conflict. Mainly, it's a cell phone generation. There's a lot of GoPro footage. Let's say there's an engagement, and you have the date of that engagement. And the engagement is near a church with white walls and a blue roof. You use imagery to find a church with white walls and a blue roof. Combined with other information you have, that establishes a line of contact. If that contact moves, if that line moves, you have a gain of control over land. That's one way that it's done. Another one is also looking at various forms of satellite imagery. One I've talked about on the channel before is one that's really used to track fires. But because of the artillery and the conflict itself, you can kind of, at times, you can see where the lines are using that. That's how that's done. So you get the lines of contact, and that helps generate the maps. Now, in the early days of this conflict, everybody was doing it themselves because nobody trusted anybody else. At this point, most people, I think, kind of agree with ISW's assessment, the Institute for the Study of War. I've never seen them be like drastically wrong on those maps. Like the debates are measured in a kilometer. It's not, it doesn't matter for the most part. The other question that came in was about the equipment and how people can know how much equipment each side has in reserve. Militaries brag. They brag. They say how much of a particular piece of equipment they have. Or you can find coverage from when they ordered it. And they ordered, 30 of this type of equipment. The U.S. does it as well. There are entire websites devoted to tracking what equipment was destroyed or captured. You subtract that from your starting number, and that gives you a rough estimate of what's in reserve. Now, with Russia, one of the real issues is they may have 500 of a particular piece of equipment in reserve, but only 300 of them work. That's a real issue, and as far as the accuracy and the gauge on what is actually in reserve, like combat capable, that's a guess for the most part. I've never seen anybody with good methodology on it. It's normally, well, this percentage of this type of equipment wasn't functioning, and then they apply that to something else. And it may not be an accurate way to do that. All of this falls under the category of open source intelligence. Another really good source of this are the various channels, like on Telegram or whatever, where bloggers who have contacts in the field report what's happening. Or in some cases, if you're lucky, you can get access to a Telegram channel that actually has people in the field in it. And you can use that. That's another good way to do it. Another one as far as assessing control of areas. If you get photos or footage that shows Ukrainian troops walking through a village that was believed to be under the control of Russia, and they're not encountering any resistance and they're out in the open, or perhaps they're hoisting up a flag, they probably gained control of that village. It's little stuff like that. This is all open source intelligence. You don't have to go to spy school to do this type of stuff. It's information that's out there. It's just sifting through it all. The accuracy of the larger accounts, everybody makes mistakes, but overall, most of the big accounts that put out information that are followed by journalists, they're mostly accurate. They really are. What you need to look for when you're judging the social media accounts that put this kind of stuff out is how objective they are or how neutral they are with their language. Now, be aware, none of them are actually neutral, but the neutrality of language is important. If it says, Ukraine slams this division in this area, they're doing a lot of cheerleading, may not be entirely accurate. If it says moderate gains here, the language is more like you would find in like AP reporting, it's probably more accurate. Again, watch for sensationalism. It's always bad. So that's a brief overview. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. If you want to dive into this topic, it's open source intelligence is the term you're looking for. as a word of caution, if you start dabbling in this, do not publish what you find until you have a really good handle on it. One, it'll be embarrassing if you're wrong. Two, if you're right and you have noticed something that nobody else has noticed and you publish it too early, you could get people hurt. So if you start diving into the topic, just be careful. And that's pretty much it. These sources are available to anybody. They're out there. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.